Hi, I'm Mary.
And I'm Katie, and this is The Housewife Did It.
True Crime Edition.
Yay.
So it is my story this week, but before I get started, we did take to the polls and ask you guys if you wanted true crime, like real-time updates, and how you would want them, and it seemed like the few people that voted said at the top of the true crime episodes. So I have a quick one for you. If you don't want to hear it and you just want to hear the story, you can fast forward through this. Katie's been really good about putting timestamps in the description. So if we need to, we can do that. But just one update for you guys. There were in Ohio three young boys. They were brothers who were killed by their father. So like I did with the last one, I'll just keep it like very simple facts. Just if you want an update on what's been going on. In that case, an Ohio man murdered his 3, 4, and 7-year-old sons and injured his wife. She had tried to like move in front of her sons, and he shot her in the hand while she was trying to protect them. When police pulled up to the scene, he was sitting on the porch with the gun on his lap, and they asked him what he was doing, and he said nothing. Like, he said the word nothing, like, I'm not doing anything.
Interesting.
Yeah, they took him into custody. He pretty quickly admitted to what had happened. He said he had been planning it for months, but they haven't given any statement on why he had been planning this for months. They did also say that one of the boys ran from him at one point, and he told the police he, quote, hunted him down in the woods and shot him as well.
Jeez.
I think that like we hear so many family annihilator cases that like and there's a podcast I've listened to, I think it may have been on Crime Junkie, where they went into detail of like the different categories of family annihilators, and like that there's always like it usually falls into these tiers of reasoning. What interests me about this is that it was only the boys.
Yeah.
Because we know that he injured his wife and then went and sat on the porch with his gun. So he
Yeah.
wasn't planning on killing his wife or his daughter.
Right. I was going to say a couple things. I find it very, very strange that you would not kill your wife. But then also, I thought maybe he just didn't kill his daughter because she managed to run off. But he did hunt down
Right.
the other boy who ran off, so he didn't. I mean, I guess he couldn't hunt down two, but it's interesting.
So basically what led police to him was that the daughter did run down the street shouting that her daddy was killing everyone, and some neighbors heard her, called the police. Part of the reason I wanted to do these like real-time true crime updates is because when something like this is happening right now, there are things we can do to help. So there is a GoFundMe set up for the boys' funeral arrangements. It was created by their aunt, because their mother, one, has to go through a physical recovery. She was shot in the hand. But also, all she has left of her family now is her daughter, and they have to plan these next steps forward. And it is very expensive to host a funeral, let alone three, and alone, and in such horrific circumstances. So we'll put the GoFundMe link in the show notes for this episode if you are interested in donating to it and helping with those funeral arrangements and supporting their mother. The name of their mother has not yet been released from what I have found. So I don't know her name. But yeah, that is one way that you can help with that situation. It's just really sad. Like, the pictures of the three of them, they're so precious.
Yeah.
And they seemed like such a happy family, so like I genuinely don't know what went wrong there, but I'm sure that we will know more soon. But in the meantime, highly encourage you to donate to their GoFundMe if you can, or at least share it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get into my case for this week. I like to do a content warning at the top of each case. I feel like some people think that that's redundant because, like, this is a true crime episode. You know what you're clicking for. But just to give you, like, specifics, if there's something specific that you don't want to hear, there is a content warning for gun violence and brief mentions of domestic abuse in this episode. But I will go ahead and get started. So, at 5:00 a.m. on Sunday, June 5th, 2005, a call comes in to 911 from a young woman. 18-year-old Noura Jackson screamed into the line for help. I'm going to start with us listening to a clip of that call because I want to get Katie's opinion, and I want you to be able to hear how she presents this to the 911 operator, to kind of get a feel of what you think she was thinking or going through at the time. So yeah, we're gonna play that clip.
Please, I need an ambulance. I need an ambulance right now. Ambulance on the line. Don't hang up. Fire department. What's the address of the emergency? 5001 New Haven Avenue. What's the problem? Tell me exactly what happened. Someone broke in my house. My mom is bleeding. Is she breathing? No, she's not breathing. She's not breathing. She's not breathing. Please help me. Ma'am, was anyone shot? No, there's blood everywhere. Please, I need a police officer. Hey, ma'am, how old is your mother? She's 39 years old. Oh my God. Oh my God, please help me. Please send somebody. Okay, listen to me, ma'am. I need you to calm down, okay, so we can help your mother. Okay? Okay, listen to me. Did you see what happened? No, I just got home. Did someone broke into your home? Yes, I was going to get my kitten out of the kitchen and there's glass everywhere. Please send an ambulance, please. Okay, listen. We have help on the way. We're going to help your mother. Somebody help me right now. Ma'am, I need you to calm down so we can help her, okay?
All right, thoughts?
That was the kindest 911 operator I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Ever.
Like at the end when she was like squeaking because she was screaming so much, I would have been losing my mind, I think, as a 911 operator.
Like losing your mind laughing at her or
no,
screaming
like,
at her?
Like, I would be like, please stop that. But yeah, she was being very understanding. Do you think that she sounded genuine?
Listen, I hate to interpret 911 calls because I always think people sound over the top. Always. And I don't know how I would sound. And I know everyone is, like, different. So I feel like I'm always wrong. Like, when I think of, like, Michael Peterson, right? Like,
yeah,
one of the most over-the-top 911 calls you've ever heard. But then sorry, folks, tend to believe Michael Peterson did not kill his wife. So I don't know. I don't know. An owl did it. It did. Okay. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I definitely think the squealing, an interesting part to me was that, like, her elevation increased at what I would consider, like, inappropriate moments. Like, the operator was, like, already helping her and was just like, hey, like, they're on their way, like, can you calm down? And it was in that moment that she's like, someone has to help me now! She decides to elevate and scream at, like, moments where the operator is helping her.
Yeah, or trying to ask her a question.
Right, and so it seems like you would be the most elevated at the beginning of the call.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, so as we'll see as we get farther into this case, it is debated whether Nora's demeanor on the 911 call is, like, genuine fear and concern, or if she is acting. But we're not there yet.
Okay.
So, when the Memphis Police Department arrive at the scene, they find Nora's mom, 39-year-old Jennifer Jackson, deceased on her bedroom floor. She had been stabbed 50 times.
She's young. Wow.
Yeah, she is. So Jennifer Schroeder Jackson was born in November of 1965. In 1980, she moved to Memphis and graduated from Memphis State University, which is now the University of Memphis. Friends describe Jennifer as athletic, compassionate, and generous. She lived alone in a middle-class neighborhood in Memphis with her teenage daughter, Noura. Noura was born on March 17, 1987. She was an only child and went to live with her mother after her parents divorced when she was only a baby. So this next thing is very interesting tidbit of information, in my opinion, that seems to very easily get glossed over in this case. Okay. So, like I said, Nora's parents divorced. She went to live with her as a baby. On January 26th, 2004, so a little over a year before Noura calls into 911 that her mom is dead, Nora's dad, Nazmi Hassanieh, was murdered by a gunshot at the Nora's Quick Stop gas station he owned in southeast Memphis. At the time of Jennifer's murder, so, like, that is literally all I know about that.
Okay.
That he was murdered.
But, like, we don't know if it was, like, a hold-up, like, he was being robbed at the gas station?
Okay, so I do know a little more than that, I guess.
Oh, okay.
So he was in the back office of the gas station. It was, like, late at night, I think, and so, like, I think the gas station itself was closed, but he was kind of in the back office, like, working on his, like, inventory and stuff, like, doing paperwork. And there is a video tape of this where a man comes in and shoots Nazmi. And then the man, like, knocks out one security camera without realizing there are two. Okay. And so then we see this man start rifling through Nazmi's things. Okay. And then he leaves. They have never solved his case, but that's really all I know. Okay. About it. We'll get to some theories on that later. Okay. But it's always, like, every time I listen to somebody talk about this case and they're like, and her dad was murdered a year ago, I'm like, I'm sorry, why are we not more interested in that?
Yeah. Well, so they both live in Memphis. But she lived with her mom. Did she have a relationship with her dad, but he just didn't have custody?
Yeah, so I'll like to talk a little more about her dad later on, but she had gotten back in touch with him when she was 16. Okay. So remember, she's 18 at the time her mother is murdered, so she had only been back in contact with him for probably about a year or a year and a half when he was murdered. Okay. So at the time of Jennifer's murder, she was working as a bond trader at the SunTrust Capital Markets and was reported to have a tumultuous relationship with Noura due to Noura engaging in drug use, underage drinking, and other rebellious behaviors. Noura went to 5 different high schools and then started homeschooling during her senior year. Even the night of her mother's murder, Noura admitted she had been drinking and smoking weed before arriving back to the house. At the scene, the police were shocked at what they were seeing, as this was a single mother, a successful investment banker. She lived in a nice, quiet neighborhood. So the police hit the ground running, but found that they had very few leads in their investigation. Obviously, her ex-husband and Nora's father was out of the picture. They couldn't identify anyone who would have wanted to harm Jennifer. They considered the idea of this being the work of a random intruder, but they noted some odd findings at the scene. First, there was broken glass on the kitchen floor. They could tell it was from a window pane in the door that led from the kitchen to the garage.
Okay.
So think about, I know no one else listening to this is going to be able to understand what I'm saying, but think about my house.
Mm-hmm.
There is a door that leads from my kitchen to my garage that has like glass. A window in it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So it's that kind of door. But they believed that the window had been busted from inside the home.
Okay.
No.
So there's glass out?
No.
Oh.
So I disagree because the glass is in the kitchen.
The glass could have been moved, I guess. Is that what they were saying? Is that it was like...
In their reasoning for this, it sounds to me that they are making a reason for this to match who they want the killer to be.
Right.
Basically, they say that the reason they think this is because they think, I guess, that the glass being broken was supposed to be like a staging to look like someone had busted in or broken into the home. And they think that they're saying that, like, basically it's supposed to look like the window had been busted out to be able to reach a lock.
Right.
That was inside the kitchen.
Yeah.
But that if someone were to have busted the window from the outside, that they wouldn't have known where the lock was. And so they were saying, like, it's pretty convenient that they were able to bust it out in this close proximity to the lock where they could reach it if they couldn't have seen the lock from outside.
Aren't most locks in the same place, though?
Yes. In my opinion.
Okay.
So
especially to that type of door, it's just going to be an on-the-knob lock.
Yes. Especially in, like, and again, I'm picturing my door that leads from the kitchen to the garage. It's not like a full door of windows. Mm-hmm. Typically, the knob is right under the windows. Mm-hmm. So if someone's breaking into a house, I've never broken into a house, but I've seen movies where someone breaks into a house. You just kind of bust the glass out and then reach around until you find the lock. So if the glass is on the kitchen floor, I would assume it was busted from the outside in. But they're saying that they believe otherwise.
I also don't, like, someone in the house could have still walked into the garage and busted it from the outside. Like,
I'm also thinking that maybe what they are thinking happened is, like, again, if this is a staging, maybe they opened the door and then busted it so the glass fell into the kitchen or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
But yeah, I think that is at best shaky reasoning.
Yeah.
But so other odd things, they also felt like the amount of stab wounds felt like overkill, 50 stab wounds, and pointed to a suspect with a relationship to the victim. On top of this, no one in the neighborhood reported having seen an intruder. Okay. So, which, it's 5 a.m. Mm-hmm. When she's found.
Right.
So, how many people are up?
Yeah.
And, again, as someone who is from Memphis, the neighborhood that this happened in is generally, like, a lot of, like, older or middle-aged married couples and, like, families. Like, they're not out at that time looking around their neighborhood for intruders. Whatever. Mm-hmm. Next, they looked into Jennifer's on and off boyfriend. He had called her around midnight the morning of the murder, but hung up before Jennifer could answer and went to sleep. However, he lived an hour from Memphis, so they eventually ruled him out, saying that he could not have been there at that time. So next, police began to interview Jennifer's daughter, Noura, since she was the one who had found her mother's body. Noura explained that she had been out all night. She had gone to Memphis's annual Italian festival with her friends. This is the entire reason I wanted to cover this case, because I can guarantee you that that's where we were on June 5th, 2005.
Yeah.
Probably not until 5 a.m.
Probably not hanging out with Noura.
Probably not. I wish that I could find our old Italian Fest videos or pictures to see if there's any point where she was in our tent. That'd be crazy.
I doubt it.
For those of you who don't know, Italian Fest happens every year in Memphis, and our family has for many years had a team. Basically what a team does is competes in all of these Italian cooking contests and all this stuff, and it's Italian people love to drink.
Yes, they
do.
So
there's a lot of alcohol consumption, and it lasts very late into the evening. But so the reason I'm saying I wonder if I could find pictures of her in our tent is because if you don't have a team, or even if you do, if you go to Italian Fest, you can kind of just wander, and there are it's like any craft festival. There are people selling things. There are food trucks. You can also just wander in and out of tents if they let you. And sometimes the tents will offer you food and drink. So it's possible she did come in our tent, which I
It's unlikely, friends. Let's clarify.
Yeah, unlikely. But the first time I heard this case, that is the one thing that stuck with me. Because I was that's where I was on that day, and it's just crazy to me. But so her alibi is what drew me to this case. So she's at Italian Fest with her friends. Then she says she went to a couple of parties. Then she just drove around by herself. She eventually stopped at a gas station and a Taco Bell before heading home, where she discovered her mother's body.
Seems like a likely story. I would have gone to Taco Bell after Italian Fest. Maybe not that year, because I would have been 7.
No, but I can tell you where we probably did go was Crystal's.
Always.
So, the police investigation also revealed that at 4:04 a.m., Noura was seen on video surveillance at Walgreens.
That is not Taco Bell.
No, she left Walgreens out of the story. We'll talk about it. But at 4:04 a.m., she was at Walgreens buying Band-Aids. Then she is seen on another video at 4:20 a.m. buying gas. Police noted that another thing they found strange was that when they arrived, Noura led them into the home and directly to the bedroom where her mother's body was.
Okay.
At first I was yeah, she called and said she found her.
Yeah.
But that's not, they didn't mean that they found it weird because she knew exactly where she was. What they thought was odd was how confidently she entered the scene, because they were still concerned that the intruder was in the home.
Can I say that I disagree?
She has been in that home for 30 minutes maybe?
However long it takes her to find a body, call you, wait for you to get there. Right. She probably didn't do her due diligence and walk around the house and check every room. Yeah. But it's also probably not the first, I know that sounds stupid, but it's probably not the first thing on her mind. No one has come out and tried to kill her in the last 30 minutes and whatever. And I think once you're there with the police, you would confidently walk into the crime scene, because if someone decides to jump out, they're an idiot, because there's police everywhere.
They're armed and loaded.
Yeah, so...
That's exactly who you would walk in confidently with.
I don't know that I would say, hey, I've been in the house for 30 minutes and no one's jumped out to kill me, but can you actually walk in first, because they might be ready now?
Right.
What?
I also, I think if it were me, especially, like, let's remember she's 18 years old. She has openly admitted that she has been drinking and is high. So let's keep that in mind. If I were in that situation and I had found my mother murdered in a pool of her own blood, I don't think I would have, like, even considered, like, oh, whoever did this might still be here. I think I would just, like, I think it would seem like an isolated incident in my mind in that way. Like, my mother is dead, like, I need to do something.
Yeah.
And not, like, because I just think it takes a lot of, like, forethought that the police would have that
Right.
Noura in this situation might not have, that, like, if she's murdered and it wasn't me, I'm the only one here, then someone must have come into the house and maybe they're still here. Like, I don't think that that's where your brain would go.
I think it might be where your brain goes originally, but like we said, now you've been in the house the whole time.
Right.
And I think you think of Alec Murdaugh, and it wasn't until the 911 operator said to him, is someone still there, that he was like, oh shit. Now, obviously we know why it took him a while to think of that, but, like, I think that made sense to me. The fact that it was like, once someone alerted him to that, he was like, oh fuck, maybe I should get a gun.
Right.
Like, no one has said to Noura, like, I would maybe walk outside of the house because we don't know. And the police are saying they were concerned, but the 911 operator didn't say that to her. The 911 operator didn't say,
did
like,
actually, she asked, like, did someone break in? And Noura said, yes, there's glass on the floor.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I could see, like, that it would have been maybe on her mind, but again, I don't think that that's, like,
and she's
the
been
top
gone
concern.
for hours, so she's not thinking this has to have happened in the
Right.
last 20 minutes.
Right,
They're
exactly.
still here.
And they're laying in wait for me.
Yeah. But.
Okay. So, yes, that's what they thought, though. In August, the case was brought to Amy Wyrick in the prosecutor's office. She was a former chief of the Gang and Narcotics Unit and was the first woman to be named Deputy District Attorney in Shelby County. So, when it was brought to her, people believed she'd be able to help crack this case because she was considered a skilled trial lawyer. So, she began her own investigation and studied the case carefully. Eventually, Amy came up with a theory of what may have happened to Jennifer, and Noura was at the center. So, here's the theory. Amy Wyrick believed that Noura was getting tired of the control Jennifer was putting on her life. Rumors had it that Noura was getting absolutely out of control. Her friends noted that she was not only smoking weed, but was doing cocaine, mushrooms, and taking bars of Xanax recreationally. Jennifer had previously been known to be a very lax parent who acted as a friend first to Noura and a parent second. However, more recently, Jennifer had been coming down more harshly on Noura and was supposedly planning on sending her to a boarding school to finish out her high school career. She was hoping that this would put an end to Noura's drug use, casual sex, and underage drinking, and essentially, like, whip her into shape. So, if something were to happen to Jennifer, her estate was valued at $1.5 million, including a life insurance policy, which Amy said Noura could use to throw parties with her friends.
Is there evidence of that?
No.
Okay.
But because when you get your parents' life insurance policy, that's the first thing you would use the money for.
I mean, some people
just
do,
throwing
but
a party.
Then they end up in prison.
Additionally, after the murder of Noura's father, Nazmi, Jennifer was the one to receive Noura's inheritance, as well as a few cars that Jennifer was hoping to sell. Noura had begun to rekindle her relationship with her father when she was 16, so this was a point of contention between Noura and her mother. So, like, basically, because when he passed away, Noura was not 18 yet, Jennifer had control of her inheritance, and these cars that he had left to her, Jennifer was like, we should sell these cars, and Noura was like, I don't want to sell them because, like, I just got him back in my life, like, I'm not ready yet. And so they were, like, kind of, people were saying they were arguing about it.
Okay.
This is all completely circumstantial, obviously. And in fact, there was no physical evidence linking Noura to her mother's murder. But DNA tests came back with results from 2 or 3 different people that did not match Noura or anyone else they looked into.
Oh.
So they had taken DNA at the scene. 2 or 3 different profiles of DNA came back that did not match Noura or anyone else they looked into, like the on and off boyfriend or anything. Regardless of this lack of evidence, MPD arrested Noura on September 29th, 2005 while she was babysitting.
Wow.
Yeah. Noura's loved ones were shocked as she had no history of violence and there was DNA evidence suggesting someone else was at the scene of the crime.
Yeah.
2 to 3 someone else's.
Yeah.
At arraignment, Amy Wyrick asked for a life sentence and a bond of $500,000. Given that she was essentially an orphan with no job, Noura was unable to pay her bond and awaited trial in jail for 3.5 years.
So they think this, like, just because she's a drug user, essentially?
They think this because, like, they have labeled her as, like, a bad kid.
Okay.
Like, she was, like, argumentative with her mother. And, yes, that she was, like, engaging in, like, substance abuse and, like, that she was, like, known as, like, a party girl. Like, yeah. They just, like, she... like the 5 high schools in 3 years thing, like she was like a bad kid, and so they felt like this is right up her alley to do something to get away from her mother's control.
Yeah.
During her time awaiting trial, Noura was having to take anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication. Noura also noted at this time that she believed the case against her would be simple to disprove because, like she said, like, I was 18. I thought, like, I'm innocent. They'll prove that, and I'll go home.
Yeah.
Which we kind of talked about with Skylar Richardson and, like, Central Park 5. When you're a teenager who's been taught to believe in public officials and the justice system, like, you think that. You're like, I know I didn't do anything wrong, so, like, this will be fine.
Yeah.
So, but... like I said, she awaited trial for 3.5 years, so she was in jail for 3.5 years. We're just waiting for the trial. Valerie Corder took on Noura's case pro bono, and she believed the case against Noura was weak. She especially honed in on the fact that the DNA samples taken in Jennifer's bedroom were unidentified and did not match Noura. Wyrick came back saying that DNA often doesn't point to anything, and that this case was no exception.
Yeah, I would agree that the lack of DNA often doesn't point to anything, right? Like, if there had been zero, zilch, nada DNA, I would say, like, yeah, it's probably still her daughter. Yeah. But,
So, even though there was no physical evidence ever linking Noura to the crime...
but linking someone else...
Wyrick stood firm in the belief that the DNA found in Jennifer's bedroom was irrelevant to her murder.
Awesome. So, does that mean Jennifer Jackson is also just, like, incredibly promiscuous and, like, has, like, a shit ton of friends if there's 3 people's DNA in her bedroom?
I will say this. That is not brought up in the trial. It does get brought up later, and I'll just go ahead and tell you. I'll say it again later. But basically, it wasn't brought up because Noura did not want that used against her mom.
Right. But
she said that she intentionally left that out of the narrative because she didn't want them to be like, well, it's like Jennifer's fault that she got killed because she was letting men into her house. And like she said that she wanted to protect her mom's like reputation in that way.
But I almost mean it in like the opposite way. Like, I would think for the prosecution to explain why there are 3 other people's DNA there, but they are not the killers.
Yeah.
I almost think as the prosecution, you would have to say, like, no, you know, she just had people in her house a lot, or she just had people over a lot, because otherwise, like, why would their DNA be there if they weren't the killers?
Yeah, I also think it depends on what type of DNA evidence it
True,
was.
right.
There's no mention anywhere that Jennifer was like sexually assaulted in any way. So I believe that it's blood DNA.
It could be like hair, I guess,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, but like I would think
if it was
is,
semen,
like,
they
blood
would have said
DNA
semen.
mixed in with her blood,
Uh-huh.
I think we could assume that it is related.
They're not just buddies.
Yeah, but if it's like hairs found on her pillow, then maybe not.
Yeah.
But they don't explain that.
Okay.
So, Noura's trial began in February of 2009, almost 4
That is crazy.
4 years after her mother's murder, and was aired live on court TV. The trial lasted 2 weeks, and during this time, Wyrick did all she could to portray Noura as a party girl with a nasty attitude, calling former friends of Noura's to testify about her drug use, abuse of her Lortab prescription, and drinking, as well as neighbors and family members to share accounts of Noura lashing out and arguing with her mother frequently.
Good God, if they could use arguing with your mother against every 18-year-old girl,
I know.
we would all be fucked.
So some of the people who did testify against Noura were some of her aunts and a half uncle, and they were also suing Noura at the time of the trial for the value of her mother's life insurance policy and her estate, because it had gone to Noura and they didn't believe she deserved it.
Okay.
At one point, the prosecution really honed in on a small cut Noura had sustained on her left hand between her thumb and forefinger in the early morning hours when Jennifer was killed. If you remember, Noura was seen on video surveillance purchasing first aid supplies from a Walgreens, which she used to dress this cut.
Okay.
Friends and family of Noura testified that she gave several different accounts of how she sustained the injury. And police noted that when Noura made her initial statement, she did not mention the stop at Walgreens or the cut on her hand. Noura later admitted that she intentionally left this out of her statement because, one, she thought it would seem suspicious, but two, she didn't really see why it was relevant. She was like, I know it didn't have anything to do with this, so I didn't see why I needed to bring it up. But also, a little bit, I don't want them to question it.
Yeah.
So, that's shady, but that's the only shady thing they've caught on her.
That is suspicious, my friend.
Yeah. So, to round out the prosecution's case against Noura, Wyrick called Andrew Hammock, who at the time was Noura's friend with benefits.
Okay.
He testified that Noura called him between the hours of 4 and 5 a.m. and asked him to meet her at her house. While this would have been a fairly normal occurrence between two teenagers that regularly hook up, Andrew admitted that in hindsight, he believed Noura wanted to use him as a cover-up so that she had someone to witness her reaction to finding her mother's body. Andrew is the only person who can place Noura at her house at this time. I honestly don't see why this necessarily means she was at her house at this time, because, one,
we know
she could just be asking him to meet her there, which in my opinion would benefit her more as far as finding her mother goes.
Yeah.
Like, that she hadn't been at the house at all. But two, there is video surveillance proving that she was not at her house during that time.
Yeah, I mean,
Walgreens at 4:04 and a gas station at 4:20. She wasn't at her house for the entirety between 4 and 5 a.m.
Right, which I think makes total sense, right? That she's driving around and she's trying to make sure he'll be there to either meet her or shortly after she gets home so that they can have sex.
Yeah.
It could be either motive, right? Like, she could just want to have sex and she has not gotten home yet and found her mother's dead body, so she thinks tonight's going to be a plenty good night to hook up with this guy.
Right.
Or sure, she was hoping for him to get there around the same time as her so that he could witness her reaction. I will say that seems like a reach because she would have to feel so confident in her ability to react correctly. Like, if I had just killed someone would not want people to witness my reaction because, like, they could pinpoint anything that's weird. It's a little easier to fake a 911 call than, like, a face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, and I think basically, like, the prosecution was using this as, like, well, obviously she was at her house between 4 and 5.
Right.
That's when she must have killed her mother.
But she's obviously
like,
not because
again,
of the footage.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand how that made sense.
Yeah. And it makes me think of, like, this is going to sound like a reach, but, like, it makes me think of, like, JonBenet Ramsey and, like, the one, like, the small thing that people point out is that, like, her father may or may not have screamed before turning on the light. Mm-hmm. And so you run that risk as soon as you add another person in there that you may walk directly to the bedroom. You may not,
like, what are the odds that you're going to take your hookup to your mom's bedroom when you think she's asleep in there?
Right. I don't, like, why would you do that? And then you have this person who just witnessed you doing something a little weird, which is, like, knock on your mom's bedroom door before you want to fuck him. Like, he's going to tell people, like, well, I thought it was a little strange. We were going to bang, and she stopped by her mom's room first, wanted me to say hi to her mother at 5 a.m. before I went to her bed. Like, that seems, like, not likely to me.
I think that Amy Wyrick was listening to the ideations of a teenage boy a little too seriously.
Yeah.
But, Noura was advised not to testify due to the effects her medication that I mentioned she had been on anti-anxiety and antidepressants in jail. And it had been affecting her, like, I think she was, like, very, like, catatonic.
Okay.
Because of them. And they were worried about how it would affect her ability to undergo cross-examination. Additionally, Noura's lawyers did not call any witnesses, believing that the DNA evidence would be enough. That's, like, the one thing I was, like, read all of my scripts to my husband before I read them to you to, like, make sure they sound okay. And I read that, and he looked at me like, what did you just say? And I was like, that seems unwise.
It is.
That seems, like, I have never heard, I don't think, of somebody thinking, like, I'm not going to call any witnesses.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. I was going to say, you have a huge chance to appeal for inadequate representation. Yeah.
For sure. In the final arguments, Wyrick yelled directly at Noura, "Just tell us where you were. That's all we're asking, Noura." Which Noura could not answer because she was not supposed to testify. She just didn't say anything. The jury deliberated for 9 hours, and when they came back, Noura she said she, like, was trying to read their faces, like, when they came in to see, like, if they looked like they felt bad for her or something, and she said that none of them would make eye contact with her. When they issued the verdict, guilty of second-degree murder, Noura put her head down and was silent. She was sentenced to 20 years and 9 months in prison with no possibility of parole on March 27th, 2009. So do you think she was guilty? Do you know what you think yet?
I don't know what I think, but I don't think I don't think the prosecution proved that she was guilty.
Okay. What seemingly ended Noura's life as she knew it launched Amy Wyrick into political success.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you, Amy.
Mm-hmm. In 2011, Wyrick, a Republican, became the first woman appointed district attorney of Shelby County. She won again several times until 2022 when she lost to Steve Mulroy. So that's our new DA. Hi, Steve.
Yeah, he's a Democrat.
Okay, the platform on his website says Wyrick's the worst resource.
Nice.
I thought so. I thought he was a Democrat because, and I didn't put this in the notes because it's not super relevant, but this was like a very big election. I remember because there was a lot of, like, tension between the two of them on reproductive laws.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, yeah, so she was the DA up until 2022 when she lost to Steve Mulroy. So she is no longer our DA as of last year. So, in 2014, Noura's lawyer appealed her conviction to the Tennessee Supreme Court, noting that a crucial piece of evidence was omitted that made one of Wyrick's star witnesses lose credibility.
Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm. Big O.
It had to have been one of Wyrick's witnesses because there weren't any defense witnesses.
Andrew Hammock, who they really, like, kind of used as, like, a star witness to put her in her home at the time, he had given a note to the police in the early days of the investigation. Prosecution admitted that they had received the note in the middle of the trial and tucked it away to give to the defense, but forgot until after the case was over.
Nice.
Yikes. So I'm going to do my best to read this note to you, but to be honest, Andrew's handwriting is about what you'd expect for an 18-year-old boy.
Okay.
So bear with me, because some of this stuff, like, I honestly couldn't tell what letter it was. So it reads, quote, "On Saturday, June 5th, close to midnight, me, Ian, J-Ron, and Marcus went to pick up Buck from his house, and he didn't come out because he had the ACT in the morning. So we met up with RG at the Paradiso after we left Bucky's. I then got into the car with Ryan. We went to Matt Milner's, and then we went to a party with Ryan. We were at the party, and Noura called Ryan's phone looking for me because I left my phone with Ian, and he told Noura that I was with Ryan. We were at this party for a little bit. Then we left because Ryan tried to start a fight. Then we went back and met Ian, Marcus, and Jay, which they were in my truck. I got in my truck. Ian was driving, Marcus in front, J-Ron in the back sleeping. So then, Ian drove us back to the house. When we got to the house, we came inside. I wanted to come home because I was rolling on XTC. So we came home later, and Grisham called and asked if I could come over. We sat there for a while, then Andy and Chelsea came over. By this time, Eddie was asleep because Eddie's girlfriend doesn't like Chelsea being at our house. At 3:57, me and Ian wanted to go to the strip club. We were on Get Well, and we stopped at a station, and me and Ian decided to go back home." End quote. That's the whole note.
What in the fuck?
There's a lot of run-on sentences.
That's a lot of people.
Yes. Also, like, he was like, and then Eddie fell asleep because his girlfriend doesn't like Chelsea being at our house. Like, I can guarantee you the police do not care about that.
What was the purpose of this note? It seems completely unrelated.
I honestly don't know, other than the fact that it is supposedly, like, evidence of his whereabouts.
Like his alibi?
Yes.
Okay.
So, the reason this note was so important was because Andrew admitted to being on ecstasy and said that he didn't have his phone for a large portion of the night.
Okay.
I will say the last timestamp he puts on this note is 3:57 a.m., which is right before he says Noura called him and invited him over. And he had said that Ian had his phone, and by that point he was back with Ian. So maybe he did have his phone at that point, but at one point he did not have his phone, and he was on ecstasy. He also makes no mention of Noura calling him after 4, like he's testified at trial. Like, and I would say, if you're writing a note in reference to a murder and you received a call by the daughter of the murdered woman, I would put that in my note, personally.
Like, it seems like he thinks anything of interest ended at 3:57.
Right. Like, he's like, and then I went home. He doesn't say at any point in the note that Noura called him, but he did say that at trial. Interesting. So, on August 22nd, 2014, the Tennessee Supreme Court unanimously overturned Noura's conviction, writing, quote, "It is difficult to overstate the importance of this portion of Mr. Hammock's testimony. Blood of unknown individuals was present on the victim's bed. Defense could have argued that Mr. Hammock himself was a plausible suspect." End quote. So, in that, they do note that the DNA that was found was blood on her bed.
Okay.
So, that's exactly what spectators began to wonder is, could Andrew have been a suspect?
With other people?
I guess, because it's, like they said, 2 or 3.
Which could be multiple things, right? Like,
yeah.
She could still just have had, like, a hair from this one, a blood drop from this one, yeah.
Yeah. So, according to cell phone records, Andrew had been texting Noura that morning, and she had called him once, but there is no clear record of if he answered the phone, how long the call lasted, or what the texts said.
Okay.
So they can't, like, prove or disprove what he's saying they talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The note also went against where Andrew said he was in the alibi he gave on the stand. Additionally, records show that the friends he mentioned in the note made a statement to MPD a week after the murder saying they actually didn't know where he was that night and that he had been acting strangely ever since.
Okay.
So all of those thousands of people that he mentioned in that note said that they did not know where he was.
Listen, one of my favorite things, not really favorite, isn't really the right word, but something I think about all the time in these cases is that, like, if you are going to provide a false alibi, you are going to lie, you need to involve as few other people as possible. Because that is where the cracks in your shit happen. Because they either don't want to lie for your ass, or they don't realize you included them. So to include 47 of them, it almost seems like maybe he thought, well, surely one of them will, like, say I was with them. You know, like, surely somebody will forget what night I was with them, or, like, forget something, or say, like, yeah, he was with me. But also, you got 47 people who are like, no.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be more believable than you, dude.
I also think, like, people say it's always, like, more suspicious the more irrelevant, weird details you give.
Right.
And so, like, saying, like, well, Eddie fell asleep because his girlfriend doesn't like when Chelsea comes over. Like, I guess maybe he thought, like, that's true. They'll say, yeah, that's true. And then I can prove that I was there because I knew he was asleep. But, like, yeah. Ultimately, police did not look any further into Andrew as a suspect.
Awesome.
In addition to the exclusion of Andrew's note, the Supreme Court identified Wyrick's closing remarks as a reason for overturning Noura's conviction. By yelling at Noura directly, Wyrick was infringing upon her right to remain silent, especially in light of Noura's intention not to testify. Outbursts like this and Noura's lack of response could easily have read as guilt to the jury, when in fact, Wyrick shouldn't have been addressing Noura in the first place, and that's why Noura didn't respond. Right. But, like, they were saying, like, the fact that she wouldn't say where she was in that moment could make the jury think that she's keeping a secret. So, this is crazy to me. While watching TV with her cellmate, Noura learned the news that her conviction had been reversed.
Oh.
So, after being in prison for 9 years, she saw her name go across the screen with the news story. She immediately found her closest friends, and they cried and celebrated because they said, like, this was so rare, and, like, she just, like, felt so lucky. Later, we will learn that Amy Wyrick's practices were questionable in more than just Noura's case.
Okay.
In another 2005 murder case, a file was found tucked away inside an envelope with a sticky note on it that read, "Do not turn over to defense. A.W."
Awesome. Awesome. Put it in the shredder, bitch.
Are you crazy?
What in the fuck?
You know, her initial... I'm sorry. That's stupid. In a 2001 capital murder case, Wyrick's star witness lied about having received $750 from the FBI, which, like, I think she says, like, I just didn't know. Other prosecutors, though, point out that, like, how could any competent lawyer overlook or be unaware of that detail when preparing to cross-examine a star witness? However, these questions raised about Wyrick's skills did not stop her from announcing that she would be retrying Nora's case.
Nora now like after 2014?
This is like
once it's overturned?
Yeah.
Okay.
Noura now had 2 lawyers ready to defend her, and she had many supporters in her corner this time who believed in her innocence. One of the things her team wanted to focus on this time was how rare it was for daughters to kill their mothers, especially with no history of abuse. They also wanted to give Noura a better chance to defend herself by including information she had previously omitted. For example, they wanted to discuss why Noura did not disclose the purchase of the bandages, and they wanted to bring up the fact that Jennifer herself had purchased band-aids for Noura for this cut on her hand.
Oh.
Meaning that Noura could not have sustained it in a struggle with her mother.
Okay.
During her murder, anyway.
Okay.
Additionally, they wanted to point out that Noura had gone to a nail appointment the day before her mother was killed, and her acrylics were still perfectly clean when police brought her to the station.
That's it. That's all I needed to know.
That right there is a Sheena Shea defense.
Yeah.
And they have pictures of her hands at the police station. She had, like, I think French tip acrylics, so white. Mm-hmm. They were perfectly clean, no, like, chips in them or anything.
They would have been gunky under there.
Yes.
Let me just say.
Noura also wanted to point out that her mother had been in an abusive marriage after her divorce with Nora's dad until 2001.
Okay.
And that she had recently been going around to bars and bringing new men home with her.
Okay.
Noura admits that she didn't want that to be a part of the original proceedings because she didn't want to shame her mother or use her dating life against her. Finally, the defense wanted to discuss the murder of Nora's father just 16 months prior to her mother's death. While his murder has never been solved, there is speculation about Nora's father. I'm going to try my best to, like, explain what the speculation was, but I think it's really hard to explain it. But basically, her dad, in addition to his gas station, he had a business where he would rent out limos to, like, ferry people to and from strip clubs.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The speculation, that part they know.
Okay.
The speculation part is that once people were in these limos, he was also running a prostitution ring.
Okay.
And that he may have had compromising videos of clients in his possession.
Okay.
How this relates to Jennifer's murder was that since Nazmi's murder, all of his belongings had been relocated to Jennifer's home.
Okay.
So they're wondering, especially with that video I mentioned from Nazmi's office, where the killer is seen ransacking through all of his things after he is dead, they're wondering, could the same person who killed Nora's father have come back to do the same to her mother in search of these tapes? And they also point out at this time that their home was also ransacked.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a very
promising
lead.
Yeah.
So in January of 2015, after a 5-month delay in the retrial, Wyrick turned the prosecution's case over to a new lawyer. She said, maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
Good call, my friend.
My bad. Noura was not originally granted a bond hearing, but got an offer in May if she would plead guilty to manslaughter.
Okay.
If she did this, Noura was told she would be able to be released immediately based on credit she had accumulated in prison for good behavior and hard work. Noura was worried about pleading guilty to something she had always maintained she didn't do, but she also wanted to be free from prison if possible. And this sounded like a way out. I think everything I've seen on this case, people have said, like, I cannot imagine a world in which I am offered a way out, like a clear way out of prison, and I don't take it, even if it means having to plead guilty. So, on May 20th, 2015, Noura signed an Alford plea.
Yay.
If you don't know what an Alford plea is, I will tell you. An Alford plea is a type of guilty plea in which the defendant does not have to admit their guilt, but instead admits that there is enough evidence against them that they will likely be found guilty as the result of a trial. So in doing this, Noura could technically enter a guilty plea and work with that plea deal without stating that she committed the crime. This plea is a part of the Michael Peterson case that we talked about earlier, as well as the West Memphis 3 case. It is a very rare type of plea deal.
Yeah.
But it is ideal in these kinds of situations because you get to maintain that you didn't do something, and basically you're just admitting, like, the police have enough evidence against me that they could find me guilty of something, but I didn't do it.
I love an Alford plea because people, like, think that that's like, oh, but I don't even want to admit that they have enough evidence on me. But to me, like, no prosecution or state is going to offer you an Alford plea if they think they have enough on you.
Right.
So in my mind, it's just like, yeah, it sucks. Like, that's still on your record.
Yeah.
But it's like a win-win because as soon as someone sees that you had an Alford plea, they think, like, okay, the state knew they were wrong. Like, the state is not going to offer you an Alford plea if they actually think they could win. So
I've also never seen an Alford plea offered with anything more than circumstantial evidence.
Right.
Available.
Right. It's like, I guess, and I think in those situations, they're not actually saying, I think there's enough evidence against me. What they're saying is a jury has literally already found me guilty. I'd rather not try again. Right.
So a few days later, Noura, after she entered the Alford plea, she would unfortunately learn that she did not actually have the credits she had been promised.
What in the fuck?
I know, in order to get out of prison right away, which meant she had 15 months left in prison.
Lawsuit!
At that point, if I knew that had been promised to her, I think I would have been like, I'm sorry, we have to maintain our end of the deal. That sucks.
Who breaks that news? Like, the prison is like, hey, it hasn't been enough time? Like, what?
I think her lawyer had to tell her, like, sorry, you didn't have as many credits as we thought. Yeah. It's so sad. So, when the time finally came, Noura was able to come out. There's, like, a video of her leaving prison. It's cute. She was able to change back into her civilian clothes and walk out of prison and into freedom. When she was released, a friend of her mom's was there to pick her up. She had never doubted Noura's innocence and was prepared to be a shoulder to lean on as Noura was reintegrated to society. Again, like I said, there's a whole video of this, like, release process, and in it, Noura asks her mom's friend if they can drive past her old house, but she didn't, like, want to go in or anything. She just wanted to see how different it was, and she'd been in prison for a long time. Then she moved in with this woman who had picked her up from prison. However, reintegrating in Memphis was difficult as Noura's name and face was well known in the community. So instead, Noura and her girlfriend, whom she met in prison, moved into a quiet apartment complex in Nashville.
Nice.
And she began working at an auto body shop.
So, did her girlfriend get out of prison at the same time as her? Or
I don't really know. Maybe they established that they were girlfriends in prison and then they were released not too far apart.
Nice.
And they were one of them waited on the other. I don't know. Amy Wyrick's office is continuously, or was, I guess, continuously undergoing investigations for withholding evidence in various cases, just like she did in Noura's. Her questionable practices are now regularly regarded as unjust amongst other lawyers in the area. In March of 2017, remember, she was just voted out of office in 2022. But in March of 2017, she agreed to accept a private reprimand and to admit that errors were made in her practice and that ethical violations charges against her were then dropped.
Because she said sorry?
Yep.
Awesome.
Because she said, you can just punish me from within.
You can just yell at me.
Yeah, I'll take that.
We should.
Not the charges.
That's how we should just let our justice system work, Amy.
Yeah. I can either yell at you now or charge you with a crime later.
Take your pick.
Also in 2017, though, the Innocence Project was hopeful about using updated DNA testing methods to retest the unidentified DNA found in Jennifer's bedroom and fully exonerate Noura. But at the time of this recording, we still don't know whose DNA that was. At that time, though, Noura was using the GED she had earned in prison to apply to colleges. She had also settled with her aunts for a portion of her mother's estate, but she still has not regained their trust or support, and they are out of her life. In time, Noura would learn that a judge that had worked with Amy Wyrick, Lee Coffey, admitted that he never would have brought Noura's case to trial with the lack of evidence the prosecution had, based on what he knew to be right within the justice system. Noura said that this statement was difficult for her and many other people to wrap their heads around, knowing that this could all have been avoided.
Yeah.
Because, all these other judges and lawyers are saying this was wrong to prosecute.
Yeah.
But, yep. Any final thoughts, questions, theories?
Okay, I think that the best theory we have is the Nazmi had some people looking for his tapes theory. But
I agree.
I want to revisit something that the defense said. So the defense says that this Andrew Hammock guy could possibly have done this, I guess. And I guess it's just in an effort to say look, he would have been more available than her, why are we so stuck on her? But I guess I want to know, is there a motive there? Is there something that, this is going to be a weird question, but, is there a possibility that him and Jennifer had any sort of, connection? Would he have known her mom well?
I have thought about that as well. There is clearly, probably just as much circumstantial evidence leaning toward him as there is Noura.
Right.
What there isn't, I think, is, a clear motive.
Right.
Some things I have considered, though, are the idea of him, if it was him, doing it for Noura.
Oh, okay.
In a way, even if it's not that she was a part of it, but thinking he was doing something for her,
right?
Or maybe because again, him and Noura weren't in a relationship. They both identified their relationship as a friends with benefits relationship. But we know that her mother was saying she was going to send her to a boarding school And one of the things she noted was that she did not like approve, I guess, of Noura's casual sex. So maybe there is some kind of anger at the idea that Noura was like going away, or that her mom did not want him around or something. But I think without any evidence, like physical evidence, and without any like commentary on that from him that we've heard of, that's kind of a stretch.
Right.
That he was like, so like that it's possible that he was like so enraged by what she was doing to Noura that he like had to do something about it. Like, from what I can tell, there has never been any mention of him saying anything like that.
Right.
So I think that there's just as much circumstantial evidence against him as against Noura. I also, though, they have not tested that DNA against Andrew Hammock, from what I understand.
Yeah.
So we don't know if there's physical evidence against him. We know there's not physical evidence against Noura.
Yeah.
I do think that the video thing is more plausible, but I think that they should test that DNA against him and see.
Yeah. True.
To rule it out.
Yeah.
You know? Anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
Well,
well,
I guess I don't know. Should I give my final theory? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's it. That's my final theory, is that I think the most likely is probably the Nazmi thing, but
yeah,
we'll never know.
I think it's crazy because like the video, I've seen the video surveillance from the gas station that night, and the guy's face isn't like that well concealed.
Oh, okay.
Like, he's wearing like a hood over his head, I think, but his face isn't covered. He thought he had covered that security camera. I mean, it's like a black and white video, and like he's wearing like a really big jacket, like, so like the face is like really all that there is that like sets him apart, and it's like pretty standard looking man. But I'm like shocked that they haven't been able to find out who did that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe if they found the videos at Jennifer's house, then we will never know.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So my sources for this episode were a YouTube video from True Crime with Kendall Rae. Shout out to my friend Madeline for sending me that YouTube video forever ago, and saying, I think you would like this because they talk about Italian Fest. Because it really caught my attention. I also used a New York Times article by Emily Bazelon. Loosely used the Noura Jackson Murderpedia page.
Okay.
It's because it's kind of not very factual.
Okay.
I also used an ABC News article by Glenn Ruppel and Alexa Valiente, and an article from the Innocence Project.
Nice. Thanks. Alrighty. That was a good one.
Thanks.
You love the ones with structural.
Yeah, I realized that the other day. Since I've been out of school, I've been kind of like banking my true crime scripts up, like just kind of like writing as many as I can while I have time. And I wrote one the other day, and I was telling my friend, I was like, I feel like I am writing about like a modern day Georgia Tan situation. And then I realized like that this one has like a little bit of that as well. And then I watched a new documentary on Netflix the other day that I don't think I'll cover, but I found it really interesting. It's called Take Care of Maya, and it is also giving modern day Georgia Tan. And I found it really interesting. And then I was just like writing down a bunch of ones that I want to do. We've talked about a couple times that we have a list of like cases we want to do, and mine is like 80 cases long, and Katie's is like 7. Uh, it's giving like Hamilton wrote the other 63. But a lot of them also, I'm like, I just love like a case with twists and turns. And I think a lot of the twists and turns come when like somebody in the justice system does something that is so completely asinine to me. All right. Bye.